In the morning they told me I could finally go home, I cried. Not because I was relieved, though I was. Not because the pain had finally dulled to something manageable, though it had. I cried because I had spent 14 days in that hospital bed rehearsing the moment my husband would walk through that door, and in every version of that moment, he was smiling. He was not smiling. He stood in the doorway of room 412 with his coat still on, his phone still in his hand, and the expression on his face was the one I had come to recognize over the past 2 years, the one that meant he was about to explain something to me in a way that was designed to make me feel unreasonable for having expected anything at all. It was a particular kind of expression, patient, almost kind, the expression of a man who believed, deeply and completely, that his inconvenience was always more significant than my need. "You look better," he said. "I feel better," I told him. "The doctor cleared me this morning. I just need help getting to the car. My left hand is still about that." He finally stepped into the room, but only far enough to let the door close behind him. He did not sit down. He did not come to me. "I have the Harrington dinner tonight." I looked at him. "I've had it on the calendar for 6 weeks, Rachel. You know how important these clients are to the firm. Harrington alone is worth nearly $2 million in annual billings." "Marcus," I said slowly, "I am being discharged from the hospital today. I had emergency surgery 12 days ago. My spleen, half my liver. I know what happened to you. I was there." He was there for approximately 4 hours on the first day, before he explained that he had a deposition he couldn't reschedule. My father had stayed every single night. My father, who was 63 years old and ran a company with 1,100 employees, had slept in the chair beside my bed every night for 2 weeks while my husband attended dinners and depositions and whatever else filled the calendar of a man who had married into money and decided that made him important. "So what are you telling me?" I asked. "I'm telling you that Diana can take you home. She's already offered." Diana was my best friend. Diana had also visited me every single day, brought me real food from the Thai place I loved, and cried in the hallway when she thought I couldn't hear her. I was not ungrateful for Diana, but Diana was not my husband. "You're going to send my best friend to pick me up from the hospital," I said, "after I almost died so that you can have dinner with a client? It's not just any, and you'll take my car." I said it quietly, not a question, because I already knew. He had been driving my car, the Audi my father had given me when I turned 30, for the past 3 weeks, ever since his lease returned and he decided, without asking, that the transition period could be handled with my vehicle. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "Mine is still at the dealership." "It has been at the dealership since October, Marcus. These things take time." I stared at him. The monitors had been unhooked that morning, but I swear I could still feel my own pulse, steady and deliberate, in a way that surgery and 14 days in a hospital bed had made very clear was not something to take for granted. "Go to your dinner," I said. Something flickered across his face. Relief, mostly. The faint shadow of guilt that passes quickly in people who have learned to metabolize it efficiently. "I'll be home by 10. We can talk then." "Of course," I said. He left without kissing me. He had not kissed me once in 14 days. I waited until I heard the elevator and then I picked up my phone and called my father. He answered on the second ring, the way he always did, as though he had been waiting. "Dad," I said, "I need you." He was there in 40 minutes. He did not ask me what happened, not right away. He helped the nurse ease me into the wheelchair, took the bag the hospital had packed for me, and pushed me down the hall with the same quiet steadiness he had brought to every difficult moment of my life. My father was not a loud man. He did not raise his voice or make declarations. What he did was show up, consistently, completely, in ways that I had spent years trying not to compare to the man I had married. In the car, once we were moving, he said, "Tell me." So I told him. I told him about Marcus and the dinner, about the car, about the 4 hours he'd spent at the hospital before his deposition pulled him away and back into a life that had continued, apparently without interruption, while I was learning to breathe again with half my liver repaired. I told him about the past 2 years, the dinners I'd attended alone, The events he'd skipped. The way money moved out of our joint accounts in amounts just small enough that I'd assumed I was miscounting, and then assumed the same thing again. And then stopped looking, because looking made me feel like a suspicious wife, and I had not wanted to be a suspicious wife. My father listened to all of it without interrupting. This was one of his skills. He had built a company from the ground up in a city that had tried to ignore him, and he had done it by being the person in every room who listened the longest before speaking. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." "Okay. How long have you known something was wrong?" I looked out the window. We were on the bridge, the city spread out below us in the early evening light, and I thought about how strange it was to see it again, to be outside and moving through the world after 14 days of ceiling tiles and the particular silence of a hospital at 3 in the morning. "A year," I said. "Maybe a little more." He nodded. He did not say anything about why I had waited or what I should have done differently. He just nodded, and then he said, "I had James run some numbers last week." James was my father's chief financial officer. He had been with my father for 18 years and had a reputation for finding things that were not meant to be found. I turned to look at him. "What kind of numbers?" "The kind that explain some things I've been noticing for about 8 months. He merged onto the highway, calm and deliberate. "Your husband has been very busy, Rachel. The apartment I had grown up in was on the 14th floor of a building my father owned outright. He had offered it to Marcus and me when we married, and Marcus had accepted with the enthusiasm of a man who understood real estate valuations, which he did, being a real estate attorney, and which had always made me slightly uneasy in retrospect. The apartment was worth $4.5 million. We paid no rent. My father helped me inside and settled me on the couch and made tea, which he had always done when things were serious. And then he opened his laptop on the coffee table and turned it to face me. "This is a summary," he said. "James has the full documentation." I read. It took me a long time. Not because the document was complicated, though it was, but because my brain kept arriving at a number or a date or a transaction description, and then stalling, the way a car stalls when you give it too much gas at once. Marcus had been a signatory on the operational account at my family's property management company since our wedding. It was standard, my father had explained at the time, a courtesy, a gesture of inclusion. The account handled vendor payments, maintenance contracts, insurance premiums. It was not glamorous. It was not the kind of account anyone would look at twice. Marcus had looked at it quite a lot. Over 19 months, he had made 143 transfers. Each one was between $4,000 and $9,000, carefully below the threshold that would trigger automatic flagging. Each one was routed through a Shell LLC registered in Delaware that James had traced back after considerable effort to a company whose sole officer was a woman named Petra Langston, who had, as of 14 months ago, moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in the West Village that cost $6,000 a month. I set down my tea. "He forged your signature," my father said quietly, "on the initial authorization that made him a secondary signatory on 3 additional accounts. The original document, the one you actually signed, only covered one account. James found the originals in storage." "How much?" I asked. My voice sounded strange to me, very flat, very even. "Just under $300,000, over 19 months. I had almost died 12 days ago. I had lain in a hospital bed with machines tracking my pulse while my husband transferred money from my family's company into an account linked to a woman in the West Village, and then came to visit me for 4 hours before a deposition." "I need you to tell me what you want to do," my father said. "I have James. I have our attorneys. I have everything I need to go to the DA's office tomorrow morning. But this is your life, Rachel. I won't move without your word." I thought about the expression on Marcus's face in the doorway. Patient, almost kind. The expression of a man explaining something to a woman he had decided was not paying close enough attention. "Do it," I said. My father made 3 phone calls that night. The first was to James, to authorize the preparation of a full forensic report. The second was to our family attorney, a woman named Patricia Chen, who had practiced law in the city for 30 years and who, when my father called her at 9:30 on a Tuesday evening, answered immediately and said only, "Tell me what you need." The third call he made privately in the kitchen, and I only heard pieces of it, the building's name, the words lock change and authorized immediately, and yes, tonight. Marcus came home at 10:47. I know the exact time because I was sitting in the living room, still on the couch where my father had settled me, with a cup of tea I had stopped drinking an hour ago. He stopped when he saw me. His tie was loosened. He smelled faintly of wine and something else. Something warm and unfamiliar, a perfume I didn't recognize. "You're up," he said. "I am. How are you feeling?" "The dinner ran long, I'm sorry." He set his keys on the table by the door. "My keys." He set my keys on the table by the door. "My keys." He set my keys on the table. Harrington is a talker once he gets started. "Did Diana get you home all right?" "My father brought me home." A small pause. "Right. Good." He moved toward the kitchen. "I'm going to get some water." "Marcus." He stopped. "I know about the accounts." I said it the same way I'd said everything tonight, quietly, evenly. The way my father spoke when things were serious. "I know about the transfers. I know about the LLC. I know about the apartment in the West Village and the woman who lives in it." The silence that followed was very long. When he turned around, the patient expression was gone. In its place was something I hadn't seen before. Something calculating and quick. Like a man running numbers. "That's," he started. "My father's attorneys have the complete forensic documentation. The forged signatures have already been identified and authenticated. Patricia Chen will be at the DA's office when it opens tomorrow morning." I paused. Patricia Chen, if you're not familiar with her, was the lead prosecutor in the Meridian Capital case in 2019. Before she came to work for my father. Marcus's jaw moved. "Tonight," I continued, "the locks on this apartment were changed. The building manager has a note on file that you are no longer an authorized resident. Your access code for the garage has been deactivated. Your name has been removed from the utility accounts." I looked at him very steadily. "Your personal items will be boxed and available for pickup through the building concierge. You should arrange that through my father's office. Rachel." His voice had shifted. The calculation was still there, but there was something underneath it now. Something urgent, almost desperate. "Whatever you think you found, there's an explanation. The LLC was a business arrangement, a client referral situation that Marcus." He stopped. "I almost died," I said. 12 days ago, I was in emergency surgery for 4 hours while you went to a deposition. I spent 14 nights in a hospital bed. You visited for a total of," I counted, 11 hours across the entire 2 weeks. I set down my tea, and in that same period, you made 6 transfers from my family's operational account. Something moved across his face then. The first genuine thing I had seen from him in longer than I could remember. Fear, mostly. And beneath it, and this was the part I would think about later, in the months that followed, a kind of exhaustion. The exhaustion of a man who had been maintaining a particular story for a very long time. "You should get your things," I said. "Tonight, if possible. My father is sending someone to change the remaining locks at 7 tomorrow morning." He left 2 hours later with 2 suitcases. He said my name once more at the door in a voice I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. My father stayed. He slept in the guest room, actually slept, this time, in a real bed, and in the morning he made eggs, and we sat at the kitchen table and he told me the rest of what James had found. The complete picture was worse than the summary. The forged signatures had been used not just on the operational accounts, but on a refinancing application for a commercial property my family owned in Brooklyn. Marcus had listed himself as a co-owner on the application. The application had not gone through. Something in the underwriting had flagged an inconsistency, but the intent was documented in emails on a personal account that James's investigator had accessed through entirely legal means that Patricia Chen had already reviewed and approved. The DA's office opened at 9. Patricia met with them at 9:15. Marcus was contacted by the DA's office at 11:42. I know this because he called me 3 times between 11 and noon, and I let each call go to voicemail, and Patricia called me at 12:30 to tell me he'd hired a defense attorney and was cooperating. He'll negotiate, Patricia said. They usually do. Let him, I said. Rachel, she paused. He's going to try to claim a portion of the apartment, the length of the marriage, the commingling of... He never paid rent, I said. My father owns the building outright. The apartment was never in our joint name. I spoke to our estate attorney this morning. I had spent the morning on the phone while my father made coffee and kept a quiet, steady presence in the kitchen. Marcus has no claim. Another pause. Your father raised you right, Patricia said. Diana came over that afternoon. She brought Thai food and sat across from me on the couch and held my hand for a long time without saying anything, which was exactly right. When she finally spoke, she said, How long did you know? About a year, I said. That I knew something. About the rest, my father put that together. I didn't know the specifics until last night. Are you okay? I thought about the question. I thought about 14 nights of ceiling tiles and the sound of the city at 3 a.m. filtered through a hospital window. I thought about 11 hours across 14 days. I thought about a man driving my car to a dinner while I learned to breathe again. I think I'm going to be, I said. The legal process took 4 months. Marcus negotiated a plea. Wire fraud. 1 count of forgery. He repaid the full amount, $286,000 and change, as a condition of the agreement. He was disbarred. The woman in the West Village, it turned out, had no idea where the money came from. She gave a statement to that effect and was not charged. I found myself feeling something complicated about that and then decided that complicated was fine, that I was allowed to feel complicated things, that not everything required resolution. My father never said I told you so. He never said it about Marcus when they first met, though I had seen the careful way he watched my then-boyfriend across the dinner table, the way he asked questions that seemed like small talk but weren't. He didn't say it now. What he did, the week after Marcus's plea was finalized, was show up at my apartment with a contractor and spend the entire day overseeing a renovation of the guest room into a proper home office because I had mentioned, once, 6 months before the accident, that I had been thinking about working from home more often. My father remembered things. It was one of his most particular skills. I filed for divorce in March. It was finalized in July. My attorney, a woman Diana had recommended who had the quiet confidence of someone who'd been winning these cases for 20 years, handled it cleanly and without drama. There was nothing to divide that was worth fighting over. Marcus had, it turned out, remarkably little of his own. I remember, the day the divorce was finalized, sitting in my home office, the room that used to be a guest room, the room my father had renovated on a Tuesday while I sat on the couch with tea, and looking at the city through the window. It was late afternoon. The light was doing the thing it does in July when it comes in at an angle and turns everything gold, and I thought about the morning I'd been discharged from the hospital. The way I had cried and told myself it was relief. I think it was relief. I think somewhere, in the part of myself that had been keeping count for a year, I had already known that the marriage was over, and the relief was for that. For the knowing, finally, being allowed to become the deciding. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my father, a photograph, the exterior of a new building his company was developing, sent with no caption, the way he always shared things he was proud of. I looked at it for a moment, and then I typed back, "It's beautiful, Dad. Save me a unit." His response came immediately, which was unusual for a man who ran a company with 1,100 employees. Already did. 2 years ago, I set the phone down and looked at the light on the wall, and I thought that this was the thing about people who love you correctly. They are always a few steps ahead, not to control where you end up, but to make sure that wherever you land, something solid is waiting. The city hummed outside the window. My left side still ached, faintly, the way it would for another year. The doctors had said, a reminder of how close things had come. I had decided to treat it as exactly that. A reminder. Not of what I had survived, though that was part of it, but of the specific, daily, unremarkable miracle of being here. Of having a father who answered on the second ring. Of having a best friend who brought Thai food and held your hand without filling the silence. Of knowing now the difference between a man who shows up for 4 hours and calls it love, and a man who sleeps in a chair for 14 nights and calls it Tuesday. I opened my laptop. I had a meeting in 20 minutes, the first project I had taken on since the hospital, a small consulting engagement with a nonprofit my father's company supported. I had spent the morning reviewing their financials, making notes in the margins the way my father had taught me, looking for the things that weren't meant to be found. I was, it turned out, quite good at finding them. The meeting went well. When it ended, I stood at the window for a moment before closing the laptop, watching the evening come in over the buildings, thinking about nothing in particular. The ache in my left side was very faint. The city was very loud, in the way cities are at that hour, full of people moving toward something, or away from something, or simply through the ordinary, irreplaceable business of a day. I was 31 years old. I had survived emergency surgery and a marriage that had been a slow, careful theft. And I was standing in a room my father had built for me, in a building my father owned, with a unit 2 floors up that he had reserved 2 years before I knew I would need it. And I thought, this is not the life I had planned. It was better.